start the recording. All right, so welcome everyone to the first Alumni Speak event of this year. My name is Claire Bergman, and I am part of the senior leadership team for the School of Social Work Student Organization, also known as SWASO. Tonight we will be discussing the field of substance use, as well as the CADC certification and OTEC program. So this evening we are joined by two alumni, Elizabethhaftenstahl and Emily Robinson. And I see Marcy just joined us, so we'll jump her in as well. Hi, Marcy. Let me pause for a second. Okay, so Elizabethhaftenstahl is a trauma-informed LCSW and certified alcohol and drug counselor, which is CADC. Elizabeth received her bachelor's degree in psychology at the University of Illinois Chicago in 2014, and then obtained her master's of social work at Loyola in 2019. During her training at Loyola, Elizabeth worked at National Youth Advocate Program, providing play therapy and trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy to youth ages 8 to 15, and at Amita Behavioral Health Addiction Services, providing the individual and group therapy to adults in their intensive outpatient abstinence-based dual diagnosis treatment program. That's a lot. Elizabeth additionally participated in Loyola's Advanced Certified Alcohol and Drug Counselor Training Program and the third cohort on the Certificate on Advanced Brief Interventions of Substance Use Among Minority Populations Training Program. These two programs allowed Elizabeth to enhance her knowledge of substance use disorders in the context of intersecting systems and learn how to effectively operate as part of a multidisciplinary treatment team, both of which have been critical at her success at Gateway Foundation Aurora over the last 2 years. Elizabeth was first employed on Gateway's front lines as an admissions counselor in January of 2020, and shortly thereafter, the COVID-19 pandemic subjected the organization and its community to complex biopsychosocial challenges. In July 2020, Elizabeth seized the opportunity to serve as Gateway's aftercare program counselor and has now acquired clients from multiple Gateway sites, including Aurora, Carbondale, Downers Grove, Joliet, and Skokie. She has been recognized by Gateway as a values leader and is committed to maintaining an empathetic, collaborative presence in her work as co-occurring treatment provider. So thank you for joining us today, Elizabeth. And our other alumni is Emily Robinson, who is currently practicing in the state of Massachusetts as an LCSW. Emily graduated magna cum laude from the University of South Florida in 2018 with a BSW and a minor in criminology. Emily then graduated from Loyola University Chicago's Advanced Standing MSW program, specializing in mental health in May of 2020. While completing her degree at LUC, Emily completed the OTEP, is it OTEP? I think, program and engaged in the expert training and completed her master's level internship at Cook County Jail as a behavioral health specialist in an anti-violence program. After graduation, Emily was employed in Massachusetts as an intervention specialist in a community-based outpatient-style adolescent substance use program. Emily has maintained a per diem position as a medical social worker for home health care. Emily is currently providing mental health and substance use care for the Massachusetts Department of Mental Health. Emily's passions include working with young adults, environmental and criminal justice, and community empowerment. So thank you for joining us as well, Emily.
Thank you.
So we'll start off the session today with, well, first off, I just want to acknowledge that there were a lot of acronyms, so we will go over what all those mean, but also let's start off with, how did you decide on the substance use field? What kind of got you to that, to go down that pathway? So we can start with Elizabeth.
I had to think about it because I mean it's obvious, but I also had to kind of figure out how to share, openly what brought me here. So to be candid, I didn't enter Loyola with any firm plan to go into this route, and that wasn't necessarily the case with my cohort. I think majority of everybody knew they wanted to do this, and they went for it, and they came in, and it was like a firm idea. I've been affected by substance use disorders through close relationships in my personal life. One in particular that's very impactful. And I just only started to kind of scratch the surface on my own recovery work at the time. One of my first professors in the program, Johanna Berry, I think that's how we say it. I hope she won't hate me for saying that wrong if I did. She ran one of the foundational social work courses and encouraged us to kind of all reflect on like our why, like why did we enter social work? What are expectations for being a social worker? So with that, I kind of realized I did have a powerful why, and I think a lot of us do. So even while I had some level of fear about like what to expect for myself, the program, my clients in the future, I kind of just went with what felt meaningful to me, even if I didn't really know what to expect. And the rest just kind of followed. So I went based on just meaning and interest, connection. And that's kind of how I decided.
Great, thank you. I think for a lot of social workers, we all have like a story of what got us into social work. And so I think that's really relatable for a lot of people. So I appreciate you sharing that for sure. And Emily, how about you? What got you interested in the substance use field?
Yeah, I think similarly to Elizabeth, I definitely didn't have the intention of going directly into the substance use field. I knew I wanted to do, mental health care work, and I've always wanted to work with, like vulnerable populations, and specifically those who are like incarcerated or involved in the criminal justice system. And that just was something that showed up throughout like my bachelor's level experience, positions and internships. I was like, okay, these things really aren't separate, they kind of go hand in hand. And then I feel like my education at Loyola, I was kind of able to tailor it to be substance use focused while still being really mental health focused as well. So I decided not to get my CADC because it wasn't something that I felt that I wanted at the time, but I applied for, OTEP and for CAPASAM. So those types of things, basically my lived experiences kind of like made me interested in it, and knowing that like if I really want to help people in this field, this is something that I have to know and understand and be able to help with as well.
Thanks for sharing that as well. I think too, you kind of touched on like the intersectionality of substance use with like so many different aspects of social work. And so I think that's why this conversation is important, because it does affect, whether you're working in schools or a hospital or wherever it is, you're going to see it somewhere. So yeah. So we can move on to how did you both had really interesting internship experiences. So how did those prepare you for your professional career? We can start with Emily this time and then we'll flip back.
Sure. Yeah, my internship, I feel like honestly prepared me for anything that's going to come at me in life. So I applied to Loyola originally wanting to do the forensic mental health subspecialization, and then that was discontinued like months after I had applied. So I was kind of like, I'm just going to make my internship, what I want. And I found a position at the Cook County Jail in the Sheriff's Anti-Violence Unit, which was a unit on, it was a medium security unit with men 18 to 25 years old who were charged with violent crimes, doing like CBT, a lot of motivational interviewing, a lot of like group and individual work, as well as conducting pre-bond mental health assessments for all people who were being booked into the jail and processed through the court that day. So I kind of had like a dual role there throughout my internship, which really gave me the experience of like learning really rapid mental health assessments, being able, to determine somebody's cognition, if they're impaired, what substances may be involved just by looking at somebody. Like that kind of training is stuff that I don't think I'll ever really get in like another type of environment. And I appreciated that, the internship and the field liaison that I had were like really supportive of just like throwing myself and the other intern that were there, completely into the role. And really gave me, I think, a lot of freedom. Like we had our own caseload, and I was really fortunate, I feel like, to have a really positive internship experience because it made going into my next position really easy. I felt like I had a good supervisor there that I could talk to, and kind of like gave me a good landmark of like what I should be looking for in a supervisor. in other positions that I take. So I had a really like overall positive internship experience that I think was definitely unusual, and like our positions even after graduation that don't always exist. Like those are really hard positions to find. So I just feel really lucky to have had the experience that I did there.
Yeah, that is a really interesting experience and not one that's common, I think for a lot of the social workers that are going through this program, that's not necessarily the niche that you would find, but it is really cool. And it's good to know too that Loyola supported you in finding something that was unique to your interests, because forensics, is going into that policing, right? And that kind of understanding of criminal justice systems, which I'm sad that we got rid of that. But um, but that's the nice thing about field is you can find something that fits what you're looking for. So that was really cool. How about you, Elizabeth? How did your internship experience prepare you?
Well, I'm like jealous. Like I wish I did something like that. I mean, I loved my stuff too, but I was like, oh man, like to be in a jail and do the pre-bond stuff. I mean, there's so much there that and a lot of my clients now have been involved in that kind of setting and had to work through all that. And so it would have been cool to have like the ins on that. But no, so that's cool, super cool. I didn't know that about Emily. So National Youth Advocate Program was my first placement, and I just kind of honestly took what I could get because there was only so many options at the time, so many time frames that worked for the agency and us, and location, of course, that mattered. Type of work. At that point, I was just kind of like, let me get my feet wet. I need to just, I'm going to be totally in on whatever's there. So that was definitely interesting, in that I got to work with youth and adults. It was a private foster care agency, so DCFS children and the trauma stuff. I mean, there was so much systemically to observe in that setting, both with the clients and the employees. Burnout was real, the system gaps were real. So it was kind of like this was, I came there to learn everything about the systems in real life. And I got to kind of do a range from the treatment continuum, from assessment to termination. So like assessment, proper kind of referring, individual therapy, that family focused therapy, and then termination. Yes, I hate the word termination, but that's the social work term. To say, okay, ready to spread your wings. I think with children, it was difficult. And that's where I kind of learned I struggled with that because it was children, we were all children at one time, and they're so vulnerable. And especially those, who had such, just unbelievable circumstances, and they were still surviving. That was really awesome to see, but I think it was kind of too close for comfort for me. I kind of caught myself not even thinking, logically, intellectually, clinically. I was kind of just taken on by the emotions. So I thought that was really helpful. And at the time I was like, oh man, what's wrong with me? Or should I do this? But supervision, the liaison stuff, that really helped make, normalize it and be like, no, this is, you're learning, you're exploring, you're trying to figure out what works and what you like, and or what are you effective at. So that was really great. All in all, I had no complaints there. It was just hard, which, to be expected. And then the second placement was with Amita Behavioral Health, their intensive outpatient program down in the Loop. So their addiction services is all totally different thing, a health system, group therapy, not adolescents, adults. And I loved that. That was where I was like, this is where I'm meant to be. It was dynamic in the sense we could integrate pretty much any theoretical framework that we learned about in school. We could do physical stuff, we could walk, it was interactive, and it was with the focus of substance use disorders and mental health. They kind of bleed into each other, but I felt like I had purpose and I was effective there. So that's kind of yeah, I think that's where I found really what I wanted through those internships, and then also saw how it was to actually be a part of the staff, because you did kind of have to present yourself. Well, I'm an intern. I'm pretty much like, think of me as one of them. And you had to kind of work through those barriers of seeing as like, oh, you're an intern. I can, we can mess with you kind of thing. But I learned how to be, in front of them as a clinician. While I was, of course, not an employee, it gave me that taste of how to do client work. So super, super critical. I mean, yeah, just like Emily, I mean, the transition from those to my real job was pretty seamless, in that I was like, okay, I know what this feels like to be uncomfortable, to be challenged, to apply myself, to have to stand alone and not lean on somebody too much for making decisions, all that. So yeah.
Great, thank you. And I think what's cool too, Emily, you spoke to the advanced standing perspective of having really just one internship within your MSW experience, which I'm in advanced standing, and I know a lot of others are advanced standing as well. And then, Elizabeth, you spoke to the 2-year process and how you can really grow between those 2 years. But it is nice to know too that you can get a lot out of your internship experience that helps you transition into the workplace when you're not having, I'm sure you still have some supervision and some collaboration, obviously, but it's not the same as being an intern. And so it's nice to know that it does work. The process does work. So next, I thought we could get a little bit into all the jargon, all the acronyms, and talk about the training programs and then how they prepped you for your professional career as well, and just helped supplement, your understanding of substance use and how you use that in your day-to-day job. So Elizabeth, if you want to talk about CADC first, and we can kind of go into that.
Yeah. So yeah, I kind of took a kind of a non-traditional, just based on those around me in my cohort, non-traditional, because they went in, they're like, I'm doing this. And I was like, oh gosh, okay, maybe. And then I did it and I was like, okay, this is great. But in any case, I realized I wanted to do it because of the specialized kind of course material, the focus on substance use disorders in the context of social work. I think doing it just kind of without that, it makes it almost, I don't know, it's not as rich and it's not as like real. Like you get to see, because these exist within a system of complicated world. This is like, social work is a systemic situation, and we can't look at it in isolation. We have to look at it in the bigger picture. But anyways, so I liked that it was going to be focusing on that within the social work framework. But also, I think really just like being able to connect with other people who had the same interest and passion. It was like, they were just as, fascinated by doing this kind of work as I was. So that was really, I think, what made it. Like I would have, I think, enjoyed it without that. But I think the group or the classes that we had, the professors tried to have us connect as a group, just like we would if we were in treatment with groups. So that kind of had, it's like a microcosm of treatment itself. Obviously not at all the same, but the sense of connection. And I think, we were also kind of encouraged to think critically about, what are we asking our clients to do in if they are in treatment? We ask them to go to meetings. So 12-step, like Alcoholics Anonymous or Smart Recovery or any of those community support meetings, we are asking them to do that. So why don't you go and do it? So that's what we're kind of required to do, is to go into those meetings. And some of us had or had not been into those meetings. So that was cool to hear kind of a mix of stories, how, what was your experience and how do you now see why these are recommended for, because that's not treatment, but it's part of treatment, I think, typically. So that was cool. So, I mean, it was a mix of knowledge, a mix of connections with our peers, mix of putting ourselves in situations as close to the population's experiences as possible. So all around, I just feel like it was, no regrets, no complaints about doing that. I'm so glad that I did, because it really, yeah, made me really firm in my decision to keep going with it too.
That's great. And I know you mentioned the process was a little bit different for you, but just for those who are listening to this, you did have to apply, right? And go through that process as well. So it is an application process.
Yeah, it's application. There's like questions and, what do you think about this? And, it's, ask specific questions related to substance use. So like, what do you think of harm reduction? What do you think of abstinence-based treatment? I mean, more specific to the material and the treatment models and stuff. But if you don't know, that's okay. It's just kind of based on what you think. I think that's what I like too, is they were very open to kind of like, whoever, if you want to be here, that's fine. Just show us that you care and, just show up, go to class, know your why also. But yeah.
For sure. Thank you. Emily, if you want to speak a little bit to the OTEC program and what that looked like for you and how it helped you as well.
Sure, yeah. So I applied for the OTEC program, which is Opioid Workforce Expansion Training Program. We were the first cohort at Loyola to do OTEP. So I think it was a learning process for everybody, but ultimately was a really, really impactful course for me to take. So for us at that point, it was just a semester-long class, and then we also had like outside presentations that we did at the end as kind of like, I guess you can call it like a little capstone or like thesis of the semester. But it wasn't. They also encouraged us to do CABASAM, which is a certificate for essentially expert training, where it's a little bit of an interdisciplinary program. So you work with a nursing student, a doctor, or a medical student. Sometimes I think there was even like a PhD student, basically people from different fields. And you get training on how to do a really brief assessment of, substance use. They also go over like PHQ-9s and depression screenings. And they have you go out in the field into like a local clinic or a hospital and actually practice doing the screening. So that was something that I did elect to do. That was also like a really helpful addition to the OTEP program, that you don't have to be an OTEP to do, and you don't have to be a CADC to do. So I think that's another way that I appreciated like Loyola. You can kind of like tailor your learning, to what you appreciated. And that was like another free opportunity to add something really cool to your resume. And I use it all the time. So just to plug that for a second, but overall, OTEP was, I think, a really critical program and has helped me stand out in the field for sure. I've had, I think, probably every person that I've interviewed with make a comment about it or ask what it was, or had looked it up and been like, oh my gosh, that's really cool that you did that. And it's allowed me to really feel like truthfully an expert in the field on opioid use disorder and medication assisted treatment. I was like talking and training my last supervisor on MAT because she wasn't that familiar, and being able to share with her information that I was given in that class and kind of help again transform this community of care into, as Elizabeth was talking about, the conversations around harm reduction, around using motivational interviewing and substance use work, and really trying to meet folks where they're at. We don't have to be abstinence based in our work, and encouraging really true social work values, I think, of addictions practice. And I think OTEP was really instrumental in just kind of making that super clear for me as somebody who wasn't a CADC, and didn't take a lot of other substance use related classes because I was advanced standing. We only have like certain classes we can kind of pick for ourselves. So ultimately, I was really glad that I did the program. And I think it's helped not only get jobs, but kind of like succeed in the field of addiction.
That's awesome. Is it just for like understanding the program itself, is it just one course over a semester and then like a capstone, and or how is it structured?
Yeah, so it was just one course over the semester. And then the ending was a presentation that was supposed to be in the community, but I graduated in May 2020 with COVID. So we had done like a virtual presentation. And that was not necessarily like, it was kind of like treated like a capstone or a thesis of the end of the class, but it was really just like your graded final assignment or paper. And I believe now, I could be wrong, but it was supposed to have an internship component as well. But because that was the first time doing it, it was just the semester long course. And then they did give us a certificate at the end. So I believe it's still Douglas Shackey who's running that program. So I would like, if you have any questions about it, he's super helpful. There might be some updated requirements to when I took it, but that was all that we had to do.
Awesome. Yeah, I can add his information to like the info for this session. And then you spoke to Cabasam as well a little bit, and I know Elizabeth, you also participated in that. Is there anything you would want to add to your experience of that specific training?
Yeah, well, shout out to Doug. He was actually in my CDC class, and he graduated, and I think he stepped into the OTEC. Is he a director, Emily, or?
I think he was, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds so, and I think came out right after I graduated, fall 19. I was like, oh man, more opportunities, but you can only do so much. So yeah, I mean, I think Cabasam, just to kind of really highlight just how cool it was to have interdisciplinary people. Like you had nursing students, medical students, doctor students, medical students in general. And you got to go into like a practice, either whether it was like a general physician's office, a treatment center. Well, actually, no, I think they're all like more healthcare settings. So emergency rooms, general physician's office, and maybe some other type of, general doctor office to kind of implement the expert model, which, yeah, like Emily said, I mean, I use that daily. The motivational interviewing stuff, that set me up so well for this. It got touched on in CADC and it got touched on in kind of the general social work courses, but I don't think I would have gotten that kind of more of an expert in it as I did if I, didn't do Cabasam. So that I think was really critical. And it also like kind of brought us all together. Like we have this common humanity, like we're all trying to help people treat with these conditions, and having, hearing, doctors, medical students say, I like, how do you talk through this thing with somebody if they're struggling with that? It's like, they picked up on some counseling tips, we picked up on more of the science based stuff, more of the hospital system stuff. So super eye-opening, and like I'm so grateful that was an option. So yeah, definitely plugging that too.
Yeah, so given all these tracks and programs and trainings and stuff, what advice would you give to current students about approaching all these different things and trying to maximize their educational experience, whether it's 1 year or 2 or part-time 3? Either one can jump in at any point.
I would just say, I was thinking about this. I'm like, what would I like to hear? Because I mean, yeah, we and Emily, we were in your shoes. So, and both of us actually weren't sure. So this is perfect. I would have I think I would have said, like, if you're interested, just do it. If you have any interest, do it. Of course, I know there's some ambivalence for some with, like, okay, what field placement hours are there? Are you working? What's your course schedule? For me, I was full-time classes, part-time field placement, and then I was able to still do Cabasam and the CADC. So I'm pretty kind of, I need my balance. I can't get too much involved with stuff, or else I'll kind of, start to wobble a little bit. But I think it was very doable. That's the other thing, is like it fit nicely, and there weren't these like grand expectations of Cabasam specifically, because that wasn't in coursework, that was outside. They really were flexible, and they had us, the program set out nicely before you started. So here, month by month, this is what we would like you to work on. So I would just say, yeah, I mean, ask questions too. That's something I didn't really do, and I just kind of jumped in. But I think, there's, I don't know, questions are your friend. Be curious about it, ask questions. But if you're interested, like, why not? That's my advice.
Yeah, I think to echo that, like, just really take advantage of the different opportunities that are offered while you're in grad school. I think, like, in the working field, there's really not the amount of like opportunity that you have while you're in grad school, and it's usually costs a lot of money. So in grad school, stuff is usually, the programs that we're talking about are no cost. And I think actually for the opioid program, we actually did receive a federal grant too, and I think that they're still continuing that program. So you can actually make money doing some of these like certificate programs and things like that. So really, like, take advantage of every kind of opportunity that you have. And I would say also to network, and try to make as many connections as you can. It's like kind of crazy, even in Massachusetts, like moving across the country, I still have people, from my class, or even some professors that I could email, if something came up, like, hey, I need some help with this, or like, what do you guys think about this? And that's kind of really cool, to be able to have that support. I also did the training in the neurosequential model of therapeutics, which is in the neurodevelopment and trauma class that Dr. Mason runs. And that was also super duper important to me, not substance use related at all. But I think if you want to like truly call yourself trauma informed, that's an awesome program to take advantage of while you're at Loyola. But really, like, those types of experiences helped me network with other people. And now NMT like has a nationwide network. I could find other NMT providers near me anywhere. So just kind of like be open to different stuff and take advantage of, the different things that are offered.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, because there is a lot that Loyola offers, and we don't always know about everything that's going on. So that's part of why we do these as well. These sessions is to like get it out to students, because there is just so much, and there are a lot of opportunities. So this question is more like, in your opinion and your experience, what has been the most difficult aspect of working in the substance use field? And why do you think that is? Or, how have you handled those situations? We can start. I don't know, whoever's ready for that question.
I'll go, since she just spoke, so we'll bounce back. Yeah, I also had to think about this question. You guys asked some good questions. And actually Emily mentioned kind of the idea earlier. So I feel like the hardest part has been more trying to employ these social work values in an abstinence-based treatment system. This whole idea that we are all trained and educated, trained in, of meeting the client where they are, self-determination, essentially, honoring their own kind of expertise on their life and what they want for themselves. That's a core value of social work, and the foundation actually of motivational interviewing, which is like, meet that person where they are, partner with them, but don't, watch the power dynamic. Don't tell, you don't know what's best for them. Let them kind of guide that. So this is challenged, I think, especially when, someone presents to our agency, which is abstinence-based. Without that, they don't have a goal of achieving total abstinence from all substances. So that's like literally, no use whatsoever. So that's a lot to ask for people in general, even if those who do want it. So I think that's definitely the trouble I've had is that we get people coming in, their goal isn't necessarily to abstain, or maybe it was, and then it isn't. So really trying to kind of not want to push them out of the system and say, nope, sorry, you don't want to be abstinent, so you can't be with us, especially if we built this rapport and we're getting to know them and we've built a partnership of some sort. But also, I think the other situation is kind of difficult is when you see someone so evidently straddling this line between life and death, and you see, okay, like you've tried this and this isn't working, or you want this and you're not making those decisions to get to that place. What's going on here? It's kind of like you just so want to, and this is part of, I've realized part of my personal history is like, I want to help people, and I want them to do good for themselves. And I don't want people to hurt themselves. I don't want people to hurt each other. And, I think we all just want to do good in social work. But I think, the truth is that we have to honor wherever they are. Some people are not ready, and some models don't fit them. And it's, we shouldn't have to fit the person to the model. We should fit, kind of mold whatever the person needs around them. So that's been definitely the trickiest part, for sure.
Yeah, I completely agree with Elizabeth that I think the whole systems aspect of working in any, substance use and even the mental health field in general, I think, we all as individual practitioners have our own, thoughts and feelings about different systems and how things work for or against some people. And I think that working in addictions, it's definitely very challenging to see folks try to navigate so many different systems, because I think that's something that's partially unique about this population is that they're usually involved with a lot of different people. There could be like criminal things going on. They could be DMH or, state mental health service involved. There could be DCF involvement. There's so many like different layers that can come with working with someone with a substance use disorder. And each layer of the system seems to pose an extra challenge for them. And so I think advocating, for your clients and like always trying to do best by them is something that is really hard to put in practice, or almost made impossible to do sometimes by the systems that are in place. And it's really frustrating and really disheartening sometimes to be, fully transparent. Like the system, to work within it is really, really frustrating. And I think that's hopefully, the only reason I have hope around it is because there are social workers who are, in the advocacy portion of things, like trying to change the way that these systems are working. And, even working with DCF here in Massachusetts, for example, like cannabis is a legal recreational substance here, and we're still removing kids from homes where there's, where cannabis is the positive drug test. And it's like all of these things that are like, okay, things aren't matching up. And so that's really challenging to work within that system. And then I think emotionally as well, you do see people in really, really horrible places in their lives, and you have some folks who don't make it also. That's unfortunately the really sad reality of this field. I think especially with, the opioid pandemic, honestly, or epidemic, sorry. And, still there's a really strong amount of fentanyl on the street. We're still losing people all the time, and we will be forever, in substance use. So I think there's a lot of emotional challenges as well.
Yeah, I think you both plugged, the macro level impact to that, and that track as well. And just the importance of the advocacy piece. I'm a big proponent of also like getting your hands dirty, finding out what's going on the ground, and then moving into that advocacy piece, because you really know what are people experiencing. You're seeing it, you're working in it. So you both should go into advocacy because you're both doing great work, but hopefully you will one day. But no, I think there are a lot of challenges to specifically substance use. And but I'm glad that you mentioned too, Emily, like the hope piece of there are other people around you who are doing the same thing with the same goals, and there can be change, it's not impossible. So shifting gears a little bit to your job search process, as that's a big thing for our upcoming graduates. How did you approach the job search for this field, looking at substance use, mental health? What were kind of the things that you looked for? And that you could even include just like the keywords that you searched for in, whatever platform you're using to search for jobs.
I'll go play the bounce back game. I think, how did I approach job searching? Oh gosh. First of all, I was so anxious. Of course, naturally, like, okay, now what do I do with this degree and this experience? And I want to do it in a timely manner, and I want something that will also make me feel like I'm getting paid for this meaningful work. So I think my approach was, I honestly just kind of knew from my internships, kind of what agencies were out there. I kind of knew what health systems looked like, what treatment centers were out there, and what other agencies, miscellaneous agencies, that I was like, well, maybe it's not substance use specific, but I can still apply, and maybe, this would be relevant anywhere. This knowledge and experience Emily and I've gotten is really relevant anywhere. So I kind of went to various websites. I went to Gateway's website. That's kind of how I got in here. See if they had kind of like the careers page. Super, seems like almost old school in a way. Like usually you get on, LinkedIn or like, what is that? Indeed, or, kind of job search there for like social work, Google jobs, like social work, clinician, counselor, those keywords, substance use, mental health. But it seems like I was getting more. First, I got to know the job a little bit better, like what the agency was about, by going to their website directly, and also got like feedback quicker. So that was kind of how I like pragmatically approached it. I also knew that, I think Emily spoke to it earlier, like knowing that I had this involvement with Campus Am and the CADC, I think part of that job searching was the confidence that I had this stuff that was very, very much going to be important for any job, that I approached it with a sense of confidence, which kind of combated some of that anxiety. So applying to somewhere you maybe don't think you would get into, or that, maybe would ignore you, or, whatever thoughts you kind of had yourself, just apply. And then, if they get back to you, great, give it a shot. And if they didn't, then, that's okay. I did get a few rejections, and, I did ask, what was it about my application, or what was it about my experience that didn't qualify me? Because we're allowed to do that, and they do have a right to say or not say, but at least ask. So again, ask, kind of the motto of my speech stuff here. So, but yeah, I think that go with confidence, try anything. If you don't get a response, it's okay. Because I think even with just, an MSW, like, you're seen as a valuable candidate for a lot of positions. So I think the Campus Am and the CADC kind of add that extra, or OTEP, add that extra oomph, like, hey, I've specialized in this, and I can consider myself somewhat of an expert, and I can offer a lot to your agency, even if you don't, deal with substance use, because it's everywhere. If it's not your clientele, it's going to be their family or their friends or their colleagues, or yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything that Elizabeth said. I think going with confidence is super important. And that's only really, and I would say like the last like 6 months for me of like job searching. Because when I first graduated, the world was a dumpster fire. COVID was like 2 months happening. Like, it was not good out there. So I actually worked for, I moved back to New Hampshire to stay with my family because we were like, we don't know what's happening in the world, and worked outside with the Environmental Protection Agency of New Hampshire doing like a summer job just until COVID settled down. So I think a big thing to remember, like coming out of grad school, is to like let some of your expectations go and like kind of be okay with how things come, because that's definitely not obviously what I wanted, you know, for myself. I wanted to come out of grad school and start making money. And so I think like it may not look the way that you expect it to, but eventually, you know, I got where I wanted to be. And again, networking is, I think, so important. In my testament to my first, you know, master's level job was a friend of mine owns a hair salon in our town and was doing someone's hair, and you know, she ran an addictions treatment center in Massachusetts, and you know, was just talking to my friend, and my friend was like, oh, my friend just graduated with her master's degree in social work, and talked to, you know, this person who ended up, she founded this community-based mental health agency, which was substance use treatment for women, that has evolved into, you know, this 150 person employee company, and just super cool person. I ended up getting a job there. And that was my first, you know, experience. I had to interview, you know, for my position with my individual supervisor and all that, but it just speaks to like, you never know kind of like who you're going to meet. So just kind of like keep an open mind again, and you never know what's going to come your way. And I think all of my experience allowed me to get the position within that agency that I did as a full-fledged clinician right out of graduate school, doing adolescent outpatient substance use and intensive family counseling with substance use as well. So that was a really unique position. And I think knowing how to market yourself in social work is really the other thing that I love to talk about. And I love to talk about money too, because I think social workers are so undervalued and so underpaid because people don't know what we do. So I always like encourage people to talk about like how much you actually bring to the table and knowing your value. And it's okay to sound a little bit cocky or like more confident in yourself. Because and for me, that's like so ick. Like even talking about it right now, I'm like, ugh, sounds so gross, but it's so against just so much of usually like who we are, you know, and talking about those kinds of things. But you know, we demand, like, it's okay for us to demand what we're worth. And I think especially in this market, I can't speak to how Chicago looks right now, but I know in Massachusetts, due to COVID, there's really long wait lists. People are really looking for clinicians, and like market yourself accordingly. Like Loyola offers so many stuff. If you've done these types of trainings, like really talk about them in your interviews, talk about the experiences that you've had, because these are, I think, different than, you know, stuff I've had with other coworkers who are fresh out of grad school too. I think I would say I feel like I've done a little bit more than they have, just with, you know, due to the experiences that were offered to me. So I think just don't sell yourself short.
Agreed.
Yeah, no, I think those are really good points. One, again, that Loyola does offer such unique programming, and totally agree that social workers are undervalued. We do a lot. But yeah, I think you're right. It is really uncomfortable to like market yourself, and like you really have to hype yourself up for that, but it is possible. It just takes a lot of practice, I think. But no, I think those are really great points. And then I know you both kind of touched on like the training programs are unique and helpful. Have you found that any jobs they're like a requirement, or really it's just something to bolster your experience coming out of grad school, where, you know, we don't have years of experience, so it gives you an edge over other people who are applying? How would you frame, is it required or not really?
For me, just Gateway's been my only job since I graduated in 2018. So for them, yeah, if you had any CADC, I mean, I had graduated with my degree and then sat for the CADC exam, I think 2 months after. And even having the fact that I was a CADC candidate on my application, they were like, cool, you want to be here, so let's go kind of thing. Whereas, yeah, somebody without it may not that they would ignore them, but certainly, you know, I'm at the top of the list and they may not have made it up there. So for substance use treatment centers, you know, the traditional centers, yeah, I would say that is definitely a plus. The CABSAM stuff, I think for sure, I mean, that just bolstered it. But I can't speak to like other agencies or because I applied, but I ran with this one. So
Yeah, I think I've been fortunate to work in a few different positions and few different types of field actually since graduating. I do like medical social work per diem for a home healthcare company. And now I'm working with, you know, severely mentally ill adults. And I don't think anything has been a requirement. I actually don't often see this, being fully transparent. I really don't see here. It's, I don't know if it's CADC or LADC. I don't see that as a requirement for jobs very often. Again, I think there's a super high demand right now, and that's like kind of how it's been since I've graduated. So that could just be like that kind of niche experience of like, there's just such a high demand. Maybe people's standards are changing. But I haven't seen that as a requirement, but I definitely think that it makes you stand out as a candidate, and really being able to show that you're able to work with a wide variety of people. You know, even if, like we were saying, you know, if you're not going to do, you know, substance use as a specialty, or you're not going to do the CADC type of program, still taking these coursework shows, you know, any kind of outpatient clinic or, you know, other setting, that you're able to work with a variety of populations and that you're knowledgeable about what you're talking about.
I was just going to say, who knows with the pandemic, like, you know, as Emily said, like the opioid epidemic, I mean, that's like alcohol, you know, every facet of substance use has just been inflamed. So I feel like, you know, this also shows other, maybe non-specific to substance use treatment, that we're willing to not only just have the conversation about this, but show that we're committed to to doing this. So yeah, while it's not a requirement, I feel like it can't go wrong. Like it's only going to help at the end. So
I think that's important to know, you know, like that you can get these jobs without that requirement necessarily, but that it gives you a leg up. And then going back to what you were saying too, Emily, I think it also gives you a place to really talk about your experience and how you are qualified and how much you can give, and really how much they could value your services specifically. So I think that's also an important piece that comes with these different training programs here at Loyola. I want to be cognizant of our time because I've kept you here for the full time, but we've had a great conversation. Is there anything else that you want to leave students with or add to the conversation before we close out our session?
Enjoy your time in graduate school. I think I like blew through it. I don't know if that was just because I was like advanced standing, or you're just like so busy. I feel like when you're in grad school, like when you end, you're like, oh my God, what's going on? So I think try to enjoy it as much as you can too. Like take advantage of like, this is your time to just learn. You don't have to be an expert at anything. And you don't have to be in the field too, honestly. There's so many, like, build good relationships with your coworkers. Don't feel like you have to learn everything, because all the stuff that we've talked about here is amazing, but I know that that's not always realistic for people to do like all of the different stuff that we've talked about, you know? So I think just, you know, take pride in like what you bring to the table and do what you can. And, you know, the fact that you're, I think, in this field says a lot. And we're a field of, they call us a field of wounded healers. I've heard that a lot. And I feel like that's really true in the profession, and that you'll have people throughout your career who carry you through too. So going back to that networking, you know, enjoy it, connect with people in whatever way you can, and, you know, continue to use other social workers to help you out.
yeah, and I would just say again to ask questions, be curious. There's no dumb questions. And do your own work, as in whatever that looks like to you, therapy, counseling. I mean, do it. It's worthwhile. And if you are in the role of direct client care, you're only going to benefit from being in the position yourself, to be able to, kind of give exactly what, yeah, you can. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, thank you both for all the information, all the advice, all the clarifying of the substance use jargon that we use here at Loyola. And I just want to extend my gratitude to having you both here and sharing your experiences with other students. It's a really valuable thing that we can do when we bring alumni and current students together. So I really appreciate you both, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.